So I wanted to record a brief video that gives you an idea of the process that will be used to create a photo such as the Milky Way photo I just uploaded. This won't be an actual tutorial, but I just wanted to give you an idea of what goes into it. So let's go and get started. You start off with a raw photo in Photoshop, and the settings, this is how it came right out of the camera in Photoshop. This is just a snippet of one of the photos. And I have a bunch of presets in here that I've worked up. So I would go down here, for instance, and click Milky Way 9, and it would apply all of the different settings, and it comes up looking like that. Here's a few other possibilities. Some of them are a little too much as far as contrast, brightness, or saturation. This one's really blue. But anyway, I think I used the last one, or maybe number 8. So we have all these different settings here. You can see here just a whole bunch of them. Okay, so that gives you an idea there. So once you have it the way you want it here, you click open, but I'm going to click cancel. If I were to click done, it would save the settings when I open that photo again. So then you have a bunch of photos that you'll put in different layers in Photoshop. So these are all the different layers, and I've already done what's called stitching them together and also blending them. So these are the original layers, but you can see it's taking just a portion of each photo. If I unclick on that, okay, there it disappeared, to blend them together. And obviously you can see there's what looks like a lot of distortion out here on the edges. So you have to fix that. I go over here, if you select everything, Command A, and then go to Image, Edit, Transform, and then Warp right down there. It's not allowing me to do that right now, I guess, because there are different layers. You would flatten it, of course, first. Anyway, don't want to get into too much detail. I'm kind of trying to, anyway, do that balance. But as I was saying, you have this problem here. On this photo, I had to actually warp it, so I got a little bit more here out of, how it's a lot more narrow up here, and I've pushed this in a little bit, and then I had to fill in with some other photos, some more nighttime sky. I did a little bit of what's called the cloning, cloning little bits and pieces from the sky here to build it up here. But I just eventually, for a lot of it, I took another photo, kind of rotated it around, and used those stars to fill in up here. So when you do all of that, hopefully you end up with something that looks like this over here. I'll go ahead and close this one, I think. Hopefully you get the idea of what I'm talking about without me actually showing you. Obviously I don't necessarily, unless you're real familiar with Photoshop, you probably don't know exactly what I'm talking about, but you get an idea still. Let's click no. So now we have this to work with, and it's late at night, so if I sound a little tired, it's because I am. Alright, so this is the first layer, and then we can see all these different layers of changes that I've done to it. If you click right here, you can do whatever changes you would like to the photo. I have them all not visible right now, so this is again what it would look like after it's stitched together with the settings on the raw photo. I won't go into the details of what the raw photo is, but let me just say that the raw photo looks pretty raw. It has a lot more information though, so you're able to do a lot more with it than you could with a JPEG. JPEG already has free, has pre-sharpening, The color is already more saturated, but so there's more latitude to make it look worse with a raw one, or better, depending on, it's more work though, so you have to, anyway, most people will shoot in raw if they're, you know, doing it professionally, for landscape at least. Okay, so we have this black and white layer, or something I've experimented with a few times. If you go to, if I click on the black and white layer and go to adjust down here, if it will come up, notice I've tweaked the sliders kind of to try to create maximum blackness here and maximum lightness over here. So yeah, I noticed that tends to be useful. Then let me back up. I'll take this original layer and I'll make a couple copies of them, and then I'll put one right here and here, and then I'll make one let me just click on that one, as it says here, overlay layer. You can set settings up here. So the overlay tends to darken, you can see right here, darken everything. It's more contrast, you might say, but then I'll overlap that, or overlay that with a screen layer, which does the exact opposite. So if you put the two together, notice all of a sudden I have a lot more luminosity, a lot more, you know, lights and darks, a lot more depth to that image. And notice, if you remember back the black and white one, let's see what that does if I click on that to make it visible. So yeah, I have even more, you know, brights and darks, kind of like what, you know, everybody's seen Ansel Adams photos. He used to really laboriously work in his dark room to, you know, with chemicals to get things like this to happen. Kind of doing this digitally. But you notice there's not a whole lot of color. One trade-off with this black and white layer is that it's taking away some of the color. Even though there's still color in the overlying screen and overlay layer, they're semi-transparent. Even though the opacity in this one's 99% and that was 99%, it's actually still transparent because of the nature of a screen setting and an overlay setting. Okay, going on, I'm getting a little more detailed than I thought I would, but I'm just trying to explain it here. So now I've added one more color balance layer, which pretty much does what you would think color balance. You can see I've tweaked the midtones, the shadows, the highlights just a little bit. I think right here I had some greens I wanted to get rid of. Hue saturation, this is the first one. Maybe this is the layer where I did that. Very slight changes. And another hue saturation. This one I bump up the color quite a bit, so you can see difference there. Let's skip up to vibrance. This also has to do with color, and that you tend to use vibrance more because it is more realistic than bumping up the saturation too much. Okay, and back to brightness and contrast 1. I essentially bumped up the brightness and contrast. I could go over and look at the settings. Wait a minute. Let's select that. Okay, right, adjustments right there. So the brightness is up to 9, the contrast is up to 15. But then I masked the whole thing. As you can see right here, everything in black is masked. It's not visible. So the only part of this brightness and contrast layer you're seeing is the white section, which conveniently is right along here. So that's what I'm doing there, is to create more brightness where I want there to be more brightness without washing out the rest of the sky. And then I have another one here that is with the different settings that's optimized for around here where there's kind of I actually reduced the contrast. I noticed the fuzz out here, if there's less contrast it becomes lighter and more visible. And then I also masked that differently, and you can see it's a little bit different pattern, white where the white is, where it is visible. Then the next one is curves. This, you can see the difference between the two, hopefully, depending on the quality of the video, but curves, you can see I've kind of tweaked certain areas along there. It's very slight. Levels, let's make that visible. So yeah, you can see what I've done there. It's a little bit lighter, essentially not quite as inky dark in the sky there. Then finally I have exposure, where I tweak the exposure and it gives it some more brightness. Very slight. Well, here it's a little bit more, but these other areas are almost right in the center, but it creates quite a different, well, it's pretty significant, that little bit of difference. Makes it brighter there. And there's a few areas that I masked. You can see, like right here, for instance, on this black and white, where I didn't want to increase the brightness of this. I thought it was too distracting and this started glaring too much. So yeah, that's just one other little note. So there you go. That's pretty much the rundown, or the summary of what was done in this photo. And if I were to view it, the proof setup, I have to click Internet sRGB standard. You can see it looks, hopefully you can see it looks more washed out now. And that's more what it's going to look like when it's uploaded. If I were to go over here, Files, Save for Web, and see what it optimizes it like, it will look something like that, but maybe a little bit brighter, a little bit more saturated. But if I click Working CMYK, that's kind of what I was seeing initially. Anyway, I won't go into any more detail there, but sRGB is, you know, the industry standard for the internet. It's not as good of a color gamut. It's still better than CMYK for printing, but anyway, there you go. That's pretty much it.